Kenny, who you going with at guard?
I'm going with a fella named Stephen Curry at $9,700. Look, I think that on another night, if the Golden State Warriors weren't up against what people see as a good defense in the Milwaukee Bucks, Steph might be a little bit more expensive. But, don't get it twisted here. He is the whole offense for the Warriors. 30-plus points per game since his return in those 3 games. The Warriors have actually looked competent on the offensive end. The thing that I'm looking at the most here, though, is that the Warriors are top 6 in pace over the last 10 games. They are second in pace for the season. The Bucks, top 3 in pace for the season and in the last 10 games. I think that these teams are just going to be running back and forth. There's going to be a billion possessions in this game. And I think that it's right for Steph Curry to have a good game. And it's important to note, too, that the Bucks are just 11th in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. So while people say that this is a good defense, this is an improved defense over last year's issues that they had in the postseason. They have not showed it lately. The Bucks have won a lot of games lately, 7 of their last 10, but they haven't played defense to the level that we know they can. So I think that this is actually a pretty high-scoring game, and I think it suits Steph Curry very well to have a good game.
All right, Stan, I know it's early over there on the West Coast. Who are you going with at guard?
I'm going to go with Tomas Satoransky. And so when I was doing all my research, I kind of wanted to fill in players. I don't want to put in all the high-priced guys, so I wanted to, have players. So, Kenny's talking about the Warriors game. I agree. That's, going to be a great, fantasy-friendly game. So I'm actually going to go with the player in that game for my high-priced guy. But for guards, I'm going with Satoransky. He's 5,100. Playing the Pacers, it's a pick'em game. DK Sports has a pick'em. 226 total, which is a very healthy total. In terms of pace, both Indy and Chicago are tied for the 8th fastest pace, so there's going to be plenty of offensive possessions. Since he entered the starting lineup 12 games ago, he's been averaging 28.2 minutes. He's been averaging 0.96 DK fantasy points per minute. He scored at least 30 DK points in 5 games, and he has a high of 42.25, which, is he accomplished that in his most recent game. So, the usage rate isn't great for him. He's at 14, but, he contributes in every category except for blocks. So the floor is relatively high. And, since Indy, they boost the fantasy points per minute to point guards by 12.2% above league average. So, the environment and the matchup, very juicy. And the price is good, too, at 5,100.
All right, sweet. All right, how about your building block at forward, Stan?
All right, so this is where I'm going with Giannis. So, he's a stud, and Kenny already went over the game environment. He averages 1.64 DK fantasy points per minute, which is top in the league. So Jokic is at 1.63, Doncic is at 1.62. So he's coming off a 72.25, 72.5 DK fantasy point performance in his last game. We know the ceiling. He has one of the highest floor ceiling combos in the game. He's well rested. He didn't play last game. He should be raring to go. And in terms of Golden State, they boost the fantasy points per minute to power forwards by 11.8% above league average. So, he scored 60 DK fantasy points 22 times on the season. And, he's gone over 70 in 9 games. So, floor ceiling combo is there and the environment is great.
Pretty enticing. Where are you going for forward, Kenny?
This one might come out of left field, but I actually really like Jalen Brown at $7,600. Now, I know you haven't heard the name Jalen Brown associated with anything good in a very long time, but the last time Boston played the Sixers, he scored 42 real-life points, which led to a very, very solid DK fantasy point total as well. But Jalen Brown was the key there, right, for Boston. And it wasn't a fluke. It's because he has a good matchup there on the wing. That is where the Sixers tend to struggle defensively. The Sixers also just have really, I think they're going to win this game. But, Stan mentioned that the DK Sportsbook line's a little bit. This is a 1.5 point spread here. The Celtics is slight underdog. I think this is a very close game. I think it's going to be very competitive. I think that the Sixers lately have had some issues. They did get Joel Embiid back, and that's going to help them on offense. But defensively, they're letting weak offenses get to them. And Boston's offense has picked it up a little bit now. They're starting to find a little bit of a groove. They're starting to move up the Eastern Conference standings. I think Jalen Brown has a big game here. The other thing to look out for is Evan Fournier is out for this game, so more minutes now going the way of Jalen Brown. That's really been his only kryptonite lately. 26 and a half minutes per game over the last two. And as long as he's out there for a lot of minutes, which I think he will be now without Fournier, I think he should be set up for a really solid night. We know he can shoot the ball, and we know that the Sixers really don't defend that well against the three.
All right, Kenny, how about center? Who are you going with as your building block?
I love Nikola Vucevic. I'm going to keep going to him. He's $8,700 here, and I still think that it's underpriced. When you look at the way that the Chicago Bulls have played basketball since acquiring Nikola Vucevic, it's actually like a meme. It's hilarious, right? They have almost 19 post-ups per game over the last 5 games, which leads the NBA by like so many post-ups, Jesse. It's ridiculous. They just force-feeding Vucevic in the post, trying to get him going, and it has worked out. He did score 22 points last time out against Brooklyn. Obviously a short-staffed team, but they won that game. And they just want to feature Vucevic as their go-to guy here since acquiring him. They want to make him the focal point of their offense, like a Joel Embiid. We were just talking about the Sixers. I think Vucevic is a really good play here at $8,700. Sabonis is not the best interior defender. The Pacers in general have been kind of lackluster on defense this year. It's a game that Chicago should win, but I just cannot ignore the volume that Vucevic is getting here. I mean, the Bulls are just feeding him the ball time after time here, and he's really performing. I mean, he's getting up the shots and he's getting them to go. So I can't ignore how well he's playing, and I can't ignore how much of the ball he has.
All right, Kenny's going with Vucevic. Who are you going with, Stan?
Before I came onto the show, I asked the other DK Live people some advice on, how to do well on the show. And they said the first thing was, make fun of Kenny. And, I want to really bad, but I mean, his recommendation of Vooch is spot on. The price is great, the usage. So, kudos to Kenny. I can't, make fun of you there. My guy is going to be Bam Adebayo, 8,300 versus the Grizzlies. I'm a fan of Bam just because he's he can do everything: pass, shoot, distribute. He has 24 double-doubles, is 13th in the NBA. He has at least 5 assists in 28 games. Usage rate of 23, which is nice. I think Vucevic he has like a 28 usage rate. So for centers, I mean, the playmaking ability of those guys is huge. He also contributes in the defensive categories. He has 1 steal and 1 block in 17 games. So, his floor is relatively high. He has a high of 62.75 DK fantasy points on the season. Now, Memphis, I mean, they're very generous to the center position. They boost the fantasy points per minute to the position by 15.29% above league average. The pace is good. Memphis pays at the 6th fastest pace. Miami bogs it down. So it's a pace-up matchup for Bam.
I love it. I love the advice. Kenny's a good sport. We know that for sure. All right, real quick, what is your value play pick, Stan?
I'm going with Killian Hayes. He's still minimum 3,000. He missed 41 games due to a hip injury. Since returning, he's played 2 games. So in his initial game back, he only played 20 minutes, scored 10.25 DK fantasy points, and the usage rate was 9.1, which kind of makes sense, right? He missed so much time, so it kind of took him a little bit of time to get back into the groove, get acclimated with his team. In his most recent game, though, which was yesterday, he played 25 minutes, usage rate was 19.4, and he put up 34.25 DK fantasy points. So there's a little risk here because there's a little unknown as, it's a back-to-back. So are they going to play him? Are they going to limit his minutes? But, he played 20, 25. So, and he was the 7th overall pick in the draft. They're going to love him. They want to develop him. The spread is 13.5. So it's going to be, there's a high likelihood of a blowout. So, they may want to just throw him out there, give him run, just give him as much run as he can. So, Stone Cold minimum with upside of 10x in, I got to go there.
Kenny, real quick, what's your value play?
I know I've liked spending money on this slate, so I'm not going to give you a minimum salary guy, but I'm going to give you a guy that's underpriced. Danilo Galinari at $5,700. Look, the minutes have been there for Gallo the last 2 games. He's flirted with 40 DK fantasy points. Great matchup against the Pelicans. And if you look at what he's been able to do defensively, over the last 5 or 10 games, he's been one of the most important Hawks. Again, you don't get points for defense that often, right? Just for being on the floor while you play good defense, but you do get minutes. And that's why he's earned himself more minutes here, Jesse. I think he's going to play a lot in this game. He's got a great matchup. He's shooting the basketball very well with 16 threes over his last 3 games, not made, attempted. So I do think that Gallo is a pretty solid value here at 5,700. I could see him getting 40 points for you and really just giving you a ton of value on this salary.